What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Scariest Things from Family Friendly Games series. I am Gambetto Gaming, and today we are tapping back into a few game series we've talked about here and there in the past videos and exposing some more truly dark moments in games like Kirby and Yokai Watch. These, as per usual, have come from the comments of the previous videos, so if you have an entry that would fit for this series, let me know down below. Now, I'll be the first to say some of these probably won't keep you up at night past the witching hour shaking in your boots. I'd ask you why you're wearing boots to bed. Maybe that's the reason you can't sleep. But if you do look past the surface level horror that is in video games like jump scares and body horror, then you can find some truly creepy moments. So let's go ahead and get into it. I really don't know if I've mentioned Kirby since the very first episode of the series last year, and that is because I've been gathering a lot of entries from you guys, and today I want to cover a couple of the ones that stood out to me. Kirby on the surface seems to be one of Nintendo's friendliest, non-controversial looking games. I mean, the protagonist looks like a big piece of bubblegum SpongeBob found on the bench. Nothing threatening here, right? Well, if you played the games and have completed them, seeing everything they have to offer all the way through, you know the underlying tone of Kirby is typically a dark one. Even just looking at some of the bosses in the Kirby series throughout the years, you could see a clear eldritch inspiration for a lot of their designs. So knowing this underlying theme is present throughout the deep lore of the Kirby series, let's take a closer look at the series' creepiest moments. When you first run into Marx in Kirby Superstar on the Super Nintendo, he will appear as a friendly character, even resembling Kirby a little bit, just if he was kinda into cosplay or something. This guy looks like he'd be hosting Mario Party 16 or something by now, you know what I'm saying? He presents himself as the solution to the conflict in the game in which the sun and moon are fighting each other, causing them both to fall out of orbit. Marx offers a pretty neat solution to this problem and states Kirby needs to summon a large comet that grants wishes known as Nova to fix this day and night cycle, and to do this he needs to gather stars throughout the game. Pretty typical Kirby story setup here. Much like we come to find with newer Kirby games, Marx is a no-good double-crossing hater, and at the last minute wishes to be the leader of the planet Popstar before transforming into his final boss form. He straight up yoinked the wish. Dude, that's why genies give you 3, in case your buddy's right there and he yoinks one of your wishes. It's even revealed he caused the sun and moon to fight in the first place in order to fulfill this prophecy of him summoning the Nova for his devious wish of taking over planet Popstar. The boss battle itself is intense as hell with bombastic music in the back and Marx constantly mocking you throughout the fight by laughing menacingly at Kirby as you harm him. Not to mention near the end of the fight, Marx will even split in half, spawning a black hole as a final effort to end Kirby right then and there. It doesn't work though. I mean, it's a cool looking move, but get good, son. This isn't even the creepiest version of Marx, as in the remake of Superstar on DS, there is another form of Marx present in the game's arena mode, which is a mode that has made plenty of appearances in many Kirby games since, in which the player takes on an endurance challenge of facing all the bosses in the game back to back. As a reward for making it all the way to the end of the arena, you will once again go against Marx, but this time after defeating him, something else will happen, wherein Marx will gain the power of the pieces of the Nova, which in turn transform him into a being known as Marx Soul. This form of Marx is by far the creepiest version and is the version many people stated terrified them the most in the comments on my previous videos. This version is much more detailed than the original Marx fight, not only since it's a DS game and everything is a bit more fleshed out visually and sound-wise, but also due to the fact that this is Marx's final form. Anybody ever watched DBZ? You know the final form is the most fucked up version. For example, whenever Marx splits in half, you can now see a bit of goo or something stretch off the two dissected pieces. I'm not saying that this small edition is gory or anything, but it adds a little bit more detail into the fact that Marx is able to literally dissect himself down the middle like this and spawn black holes. And I don't know, it's just on a different level, man. By far the creepiest part of this comes when you finally defeat this souped up version of Marx, wherein he will split in half much like the black hole attack, but this time he turns a sickly purple and lets out an ear-piercing shriek, which is enough to send a chill down anyone's spine, especially anyone young playing this. The boss is pretty involved and difficult, especially the Marx soul form, so it takes a lot to even see this, meaning many people wouldn't have made it this far, especially kids who played it. But for those who did, it surely shows just how disturbing the character Marx is. You know, one day this guy was a little pink blob with a wizard hat and a pair of slick loafers. Next moment, you know, you're fighting the stuff of nightmares. That's just Kirby for you, you know? Kirby Planet Robobot always stood out to me as an instant Kirby classic from the very first time I played it, but unfortunately I never beat the game, thus I never knew how extensive the backstory and subsequent events that happened to the final boss are in the game known as President Haltmann. Unlike taking the form of some messed up eldritch being, Professor Haltmann takes on a more normal looking appearance, and while this seems unassuming at first, the backstory to Haltmann and what ends up happening to him by the true ending of the game will have your head in your hands wondering where you went wrong. I was just trying to enjoy a Kirby game here. Now I'm depressed. In Planet Kirby Robobot, by the beginning of the game, Haltmann is down the worst you could be as a president in his position, in which all he cares about is the prosperity for his company and will do anything and everything to achieve this. For starters, he takes over full planets in order to farm their resources to feed his evil corporation, and not only that, help him on his quest to fully complete the Star Dream. The Star Dream is a large computer-like mother base primarily made to grant wishes and was brought about by Haltmann himself after he obtained blueprints scattered across the universe, alluding to this machine before obtaining it altogether. This was back when he wasn't the bad guy he's known as by the time Kirby Planet Robobot starts, and this is mainly due to the fact he still had his daughter Susie alongside him in his adventures. When Haltmann first discovered the Star Dream machine, he started testing the machine, which ended up being volatile one of the times, as his daughter ended up being warped to a separate dimension and thus leaving him thinking his daughter full-on died right in front of him. The Star Dream was also destroyed during this event, so Haltmann made it his mission to restore the Star Dream in order to revive his daughter. However, slowly but surely, the overuse of the machine started to cause memory loss for Haltmann, and before long he had completely forgotten about his daughter altogether, and the original reason he was pursuing the Star Dream machine so much. Even worse, Susie ends up returning much later in life and finds Haltmann, who at this point has completely forgotten about her, but still feels this strange connection, and he ends up hiring her as his secretary. Talk about the worst father-daughter relationship ever. With the memories wiped away of his own daughter and any semblance of the person he was before, the Star Dream has now built the ultimate president for the prosperity of its own self at the end of the day, if you really look at it like that. It's a self-feeding machine. And that's just a setup for the story of Kirby Planet Robobot. Whew! But it's important to know Haltmann's backstory to truly understand how dark the end of the game is. Huge shout out to everyone who left me a comment to talk about this scenario, this ending of the game, specifically Sir Bonehead, who has been leaving me comments to let me know about this for a few months now. I feel pretty dumb just now getting to this one because this is truly a disturbing scenario. At the end of the game, Haltmann is taken over by the Star Dream computer after Susie tries to take matters into her own hands. Basically, Haltmann gets taken over akin to something like a parasite on a bug or something. This is even shown through the changing of Haltmann's eyes to a more stagnant, lifeless yellow. It's a creepy enough moment, but considering what happens after this, it's also a very impactful moment. You then take over the halberd for one of the coolest boss battles in Kirby history, since you get to man the halberd in the air against the Star Dream. It's a super intense fight and way cooler to man the halberd than riding on some dinky star for the flying segment of a boss battle. The Star Dream has several phases and transformations. In true Kirby fashion, it takes a hot minute to take this thing down. Once destroying the Star Dream machine at its core access arc, the machine is finally destroyed along with any semblance of President Haltmann. Since he had been taken over by the Star Dream to the point of not remembering his own daughter, at this point of being taken over, it was way too late for him. It gets even darker when you enter the true arena section of the game, which similarly to the arena is a boss rush. At the end of this mode, you will face off against the Star Dream again, but this time it's a much more souped up version known as the Star Dream Soul OS. This is a whole ass operating system. Move out of the way, Windows. In typical arena fashion, this is a much harder version of the boss, but it's mostly the same throughout. That is until you reach the ending segment of the boss fight. During this segment, you are fighting what appears to be the literal heart of the machine, and when you start attacking the machine itself, you can hear screams of pain coming from the heart, the same screams you can hear from Haltmann earlier in the game. This means that even at this point, There is still a portion of this guy, Haltmann, that is present within the Star Dream, even down to its heart. At the very end of the fight, after Kirby's done the deed, the heart will start to deteriorate before an eerie voice clip of Haltmann wallowing in pain can be heard. And it sounds deeper than his voice, so it could be a combination of him and the machine, but that's kind of just my speculation. There is also a pause screen description near the end of the fight that states, all of Haltmann's memories have been deleted from the OS, even his soul. The last trace of Haltmann has vanished. Star Dream has gone from a near-perfect being to a cold, mindless machine. And man, at the end of the day, I think the summary of this character by Sir Bonehead was perfect. Haltmann truly is a tragic character. He's almost even innocent in a way, besides the genuine curiosity to find and use the Star Dream, but he never asked to lose his memory or be completely changed by the machine itself, all for it to end in the very essence of Haltmann being deleted, and by the hand of the player no less. It's one of the darkest endings for a boss in general, but definitely for a Nintendo game. You may have to search really deep to find this one and learn about how dark and creepy this boss and its backstory is, but this is the type of stuff I love to learn about and share with you guys on the channel. I think a lot of people click on these videos expecting to see a Freddy Fazbear type of jump scare in a game like Mario, and if it's not that, it's not scary, bruh. But hey, if you take the time to dissect some of these games that seem nice and bright on the outside, you're bound to find some dark shit. So thanks for everyone who recommended this entry. I hope I did it some justice. That'll do it for the Kirby talk in this video, but I still have a lot more to talk about from the series thanks to you guys in the comments. For example, the ending events of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which many of you say is the darkest the Kirby series has got in terms of endings, plus the Magalore screams from Return to Dreamland, which is one of my favorite Kirby games. So I will definitely cover these in the future, but for the sake of time and the flow of the video, let's move on to some other entries. In this edition of licensed kids product turned dark in a weird video game adaptation of said product, we have Tom and Jerry. This came from a comment on the last episode in which Dion recalled the game in the following comment. There's this Tom and Jerry Game Boy Advance game. I believe it's called Infernal Escape, and well, the entire game is just disturbing and creepy, despite being based on an episode of the series. The fact Tom literally dies in the opening cutscene. Like usual with these type of games, the sentiment from a lot of people is probably going to be, how the fuck could this be scary? It's a Tom and Jerry game, on Game Boy Advance nonetheless. And I will argue that purely from the visual and gameplay perspective, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's all that creepy a game. But when you consider the overall themes and certain objectives in the game, all the way down to the strange, eerie details, this comment starts to make a lot more sense. Let's start with the obvious, since it's on the box art of the game. Tom dies and goes to hell in this game. The name of the game being Tom and Jerry in Infernal Escape, it calls to the fact that Tom must escape the underworld after seemingly dying at the hands of Jerry. This is actually based on an episode from the actual show back in the day titled Heavenly Puss. And man, that's such an unfortunate name nowadays, but I'm glad they didn't name the video game something like Hellish Cock. In the episode, Tom is killed in his typical antics with Jerry, in which a piano falls onto Tom, killing him instantly, which, like, hasn't this guy been hit with so much more bullshit already? Why the hell is this taking him out? While the game and the episode aren't super related, it clearly took inspiration from the heaven and hell aspects of that episode. To start, the game shows an eerily similar cutscene of Tom getting crushed by the piano, but in slideshow form, and if you ask me, they went a little too far here. Nah, just kidding, I added that last one there. This screen right here is actually in the game and is pretty dark to witness, especially since it takes place 23 seconds after you load into the game. After this, Tom is sent straight to hell, wherein a devil is taunting him and an angel ends up assisting Tom before the game starts. The main objective here is to make it through the levels the game offers while collecting a main objective. You know, in the first level, you need to collect a bunch of golden bones from these dogs, whilst in the second level, you need to free the starved cat prisoner slaves from a castle full of Jerrys. Yeah, that was kind of a crazy leap right there. Also, take a look at these prisoners. They're not doing so good, dude. Not to mention any time the player is hit, Tom's face icon will change with each beating he takes. This is reminiscent of something like Banjo and Kazooie's life system, but in this game you feel even worse for Tom as he's just straight up just upset anytime he gets smacked up. Then he progresses to being in bandages and eventually just remains as a skull. You really feel like you're smack dab in the middle of this cat's worst fever dream. It's not going to be a simple game over screen when you lose all your lives either, as you get this nice screen of Tom falling back down into the flames of hell and he's not looking like he wants to go. Once down there, you do get a chance to get out after the angel tells you to grab 3 souls in this bonus hell stage. Except these souls are represented by Tom himself, except this time he's in a pretty creepy ghost form devoid of pupils and creepily floating around aimlessly. The mere fact you're collecting souls of the damned to save your own skin is a pretty dark concept alone, but that's an overlapping feature of the game throughout. At least us not forget that Tom the cat got crushed in a lively kind of way, so this was never going to be a walk in the park kind of game, you know? Thanks for the recommendation and showing everyone this obscure and creepy game from the shovelware era of the Game Boy Advance. I have a feeling there is a lot more games like this out there, so let me know if you have any good candidates in the comments below. If I had to name to you the earliest memory of a large water creature scaring me in a video game, it'd have to be Snackers from Banjo and Kazooie, and even later in a game called Resistance 2 where you have to trek through flooded towns dodging these freaky ass fish aliens. This is a common technique in games to add a horror element to it because, well, who doesn't have a little fear of the unknown, you know? And hey, the water is completely unknown, especially in uncharted territories in video games. What helps these enemies stand out, especially something like Snackers, is their ability to jump scare the player even phasing into existence right in front of them. They just cross-dissolve that homie right into the level. Who's live programming this shit? Another 3D platformer game that got the jump scare creature in the water right was the original Jak and Daxter. This game featured a unique invisible wall system wherein instead of a typical invisible wall in the water, they instead put an enemy whose sole purpose is to kill the player if they swim too far off the map. The worst part about it is it's super hard to tell when you've reached a map's border, so this guy is 100% gonna sneak up on you, and if he grabs you, it's a one-shot kill. The only warning you do get is a heartbeat sound effect that starts to kick up whenever the Lurker shark spawns. So if you're keen enough, you can dodge it, but the panic that ensues after you start hearing the heartbeat is pretty unmatched and likely will get you killed out of sheer anxiety of the situation at hand. If you think this was creepy enough, there was actually cut sound effects for the Lurker shark enemy that would have made it even more disturbing. Let's take a listen. This combined with the heartbeat sound effect would have definitely been too intense for kids playing this game, so they cut the audio and just kept the heartbeat, which is already ass-clenching enough, let's be honest. The Lurker shark was prominent in the first Jak and Daxter game, with a few cameos here and there before their return fully in Daxter, the PSP spin-off of the series. In this game, we can see many different sizes of the Lurker shark species, including this giant MFer who's just casually towering over the player all the while you're playing this level. They still act as enemies in this game, but I still think the first game is the scariest iteration of this enemy as it's so unexpected, and with no way to kill the creature, your only option is to swim away at full sprint when you see this guy spawn. Yeah, you can sprint in the water. You can sprint swim. You never sprint swam. Many people in the comments have mentioned the Lurker shark being the reason they're scared of the ocean and sea creatures, and I can see why. This would make me never want to test to see if there's an invisible wall in the real ocean, which, in reality, this is actually a super accurate invisible wall to real life. Sharks act as the real invisible walls to the ocean, and I just realized Jak and Daxter is the most realistic game ever made. Fight me. Piglet's big game from the last video brought up a lot of memories for people from old school licensed kids games from all of our favorite cartoon characters. One of the most recommended entries is the click and find puzzle game Disney's Magic Mirror starring Mickey Mouse, or as I will call it from here on out, Mickey's Magic Mirror, because the starring tagline starts to get annoying pretty quick. Quite a few comments brought up the fact that this game as a whole just feels off and creepy all the way throughout, so much like Piglet's big game, there isn't one specific scene or thing that creeps the player out, but rather a combination of a lot of strange things that starts as soon as you load up the game. First of all, as this comment stated, Mickey himself looks super off, and not in a concept art for Epic Mickey kind of way, more like a Disney character worker got mocapped for Mickey's model here in the suit. This is mainly due to the fact that Mickey's eyes aren't flush with his face, so it makes it look like his face is actually a mask, whilst the player can see the person's real eyes peeking through, whoever this fake Mickey is. It was probably a simple artistic design choice by the game devs, maybe even to add more physical depth to Mickey's character model, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, this Mickey looks like he would be the newest animatronic in the next FNAF game. I mean, just look at him. Not only this, but Mickey is a silent protagonist besides some reactionary sounds and screams, but this overall makes for a pretty eerie experience throughout, much like how Dead Space 1's protagonist stayed silent, adding to the scary atmosphere of the game. Mickey makes for a super uncanny experience throughout the game. It feels like I'm playing as the doll from the I Feel Fantastic music video. There's no life in these eyes, man. Mickey does gain some personality though, and you might even start to feel bad for him, as not too long into his venture he starts to face some death-defying stunts. The main plot of the game is Mickey wakes up in the middle of the night, or I guess his spirit does. You know you're sleeping good if your spirit leaves your body in the middle of the night. Whoo! The dream version of Mickey looks over to the mirror in the room, which now shows a creepy ghost figure in the mirror. At least as creepy as a ghost from Luigi's Mansion or something. The ghost will then lead Dream Mickey into the mirror, wherein he wakes up in what I can only describe as Disney-branded backrooms. Tell me this doesn't look like a liminal image of a random room you've seen in the past. In fact, this is a repeating trend throughout this game, as you'll find yourself walking through a haunted alternate version of Mickey's house. The ghost ends up destroying the portal mirror back to Mickey's rimmed-up physical body, and this has to be one of the most intense and equally funny cutscenes from the game.
What?
After Mickey dies in his anime-ass, overdramatic death, he awakes to find the mirror shards have hidden themselves around the house, and this becomes the game's main objective. With this, Mickey starts his adventure in this creepy dream version of his own house, and I don't know if you've ever dreamed your own house, but it feels much different and even creepy if your brain does take it that way. So off-rip, concept-wise, this is already an incredibly creepy game setup for a kid's Mickey Mouse game. The creepiest parts by far come with how almost graphic and violent the game can get. If you laughed at Mickey Mouse getting blown back like Waltz and Django Unchained from the mirror cutscene, then you might find these next ones funny too. But as a kid, to see your idol Mickey Mouse constantly dodge death, it's gotta do something to you. These occurrences are caused by the same ghost that trapped Mickey here and occur after a short QuickTime event of sorts where you have to guess if what's coming is a trick or not. During this freeze frame, the colors turn inverted, and overall it just gives off a weird, strange vibe. Some of the more violent tricks that can occur in the game is one where Mickey narrowly avoids being crushed by a falling chandelier, a la Luigi's Mansion. You never played the opening to Luigi's Mansion, Mickey? What's wrong with you? You almost deserve to get hit by that fucking chandelier. Or how about this one where the sword from Donkey Kong Country 2 tries to decapitate Mickey Mouse? Alright, I edited that last part a little bit, but it's not too far off from what kids were expecting to happen to this goofy looking rat here. Much like Piglet's Big Game, there are full segments in the game where you'll be walking around dark rooms and corridors of Mickey's house, unsure if the next corner you will take will end Mickey's life in some sort of fucked up shotgun trap. I don't know what this guy's got planned. I would have without a doubt been scarred slightly by this game, maybe even in the same way I was creeped out in a game like Luigi's Mansion, but considering the intended player base for this game was probably even younger than those playing Luigi's Mansion, yeah, you can say certain parts of this game are a little much. Again, this is the kind of stuff I love finding out about when doing these videos, and it just casts a light on some of these obscure-ass, strange kids games from back in the day that many people forgot over time, but still lives rent-free in some of those who got scarred by them. Thanks again for everyone who shared their experiences with this freaky-ass game. I can't pretend like I didn't gain a lot of you guys watching this because I talked about some creepy moments from the Yokai Watch series, and even though for many I didn't do it justice, I wanted to thank everyone who left me more entries to cover from the series, which there are many. I already know this won't be covering all of the topics, but I wanted to bring some Yokai Watch back up to cover all the additional topics left by you guys on the previous videos. And if you know of more that you would like me to break down in future videos, leave me some in the comments again. I find it to be an interesting series, and with how much creepy stuff there seems to be that comes from the games, I think it's a great fit for this series. So let's go ahead and hop in. A sentiment I saw a lot in the comments was that, of course, Yokai Watch would be a little bit more disturbing than your typical kid RPG series because they are based on the Japanese folklore by the same name. Yokai originated from the earliest known Japanese literature found from the 8th century Kojiki. It's an integral part of Japanese history, so to see all the reference to them throughout the years isn't surprising since it has been in their culture since the beginning, it seems. Yokai can take shape in many different forms like ghosts, demons, monsters, shapeshifters, tricksters, and other strange beings. Some of the creepiest yokais I've just come across over the years are some of the following. The Rokurokubi is known for either having a long stretched neck but otherwise normal human feature, while certain types of Rokurokubi, their head completely detaches itself and floats around freely from the human body. The creepy long neck from this yokai has been referenced a lot in modern media, even in other video games like Little Nightmares and one of the scariest bosses in that series. Another one that strikes at my fear of large things known as megalophobia is the Gasha Dakoru, which takes shape as a larger-than-life skeleton that towers to be 15 times larger than a human being. They are known to feast upon humans during the middle of the night in the quietest hours around 2 a.m., and just the thought of an Elden Ring boss becoming a real thing is actually kind of terrifying to me. I think noting the origins of yokai, not only present in Yokai Watch, but also referenced in a ton of other media forms, is pretty important to understanding the creepy nature of these beings, even being toned down for a kid's RPG adventure game like Yokai Watch. If you took any of these yokai out of context of the game and connected them to real-life yokai, I bet you'd be more disturbed than you think. That guy might be a cute whipped cream looking ghost in the game, but in real life he looks something like this. Clowns in video games are always a little creepy to run into, especially if you're not expecting them, and even more if you have a fear of clowns, right? I think a sole suspect of a lot of people today who have fears of clowns had to come from the Clown Time event in Yokai Watch 3. I mean, at least 10 people, right? Much like Terror Time, the Clown Time will happen at random and only happens when you run into this creepy looking clown homie here. After he stops you to dance in your face, live emote on you, he'll start chasing you, and this guy is pretty quick. So quick, in fact, that even full sprinting away from him, he can still stay pretty hot on your tail. So this segment's a real ass clincher. If he does end up catching you, he can send you to the Miracle Circus, where he dishes out a punishment to the player. The punishment ranges from a battle against a trio of zombie yokai, or you can be sent to Zombie Night, which is pretty similar in design to Terror Time, forcing the player into a creepy stealth section of the game. If you do happen to escape the clown before he runs you down, you get a choice of a few rare items. So in the end, if you do escape, it's not all that bad, right? Beyond just the terrifying prospect of running into a clown in the middle of the night, the other creepy part of this clown is he's one of the few enemies that isn't a yokai in the game, and rather just some guy. I mean, it hasn't been fully ruled out. He could be a yokai that's just not been confirmed yet. So yokai or not, a creepy ass dude dressed up as a clown serving punishments to kids is never a good look, let's be honest. This comment even brings up a great point that the clown was never properly introduced by the game, meaning you'll likely not know this guy isn't friendly or just a regular NPC until it's too late. So in that sense, it can even be a jump scare to the player. Thanks for pointing out this part of Yokai Watch 3 that I'm sure gave some people clown PTSD, like we're back in the summer of 2016 again. Last time I talked about the Nocturne Hospital from Yokai Watch 1, and many people cited another level from the game that trumps the Nocturne Hospital in terms of creepiness. In Chapter 7, the player is lured into the construction site overlooking Shoppers Row after a fire was set at Shoppers Row, and the player begins to investigate before their investigation leads them to the construction site. The level itself shares the same eerie attributes as the Nocturne Hospital, with dark rooms, small tight hallways, and plenty of off-putting yokai to face face off against. However, the more disturbing part of the level comes from the boss known as Massiface. The comment that was left recommending the construction site to talk about mentioned that Massiface was the worst part of the level in terms of scaring them, and I can definitely see why. The first time you run into this boss is during a small cutscene that happens seemingly randomly, where your characters are facing away from a window in the construction site, wherein this giant yokai Massiface can be seen peeking through a window. This is the first time the player is introduced to this creepy ass yokai, and it sets the atmosphere perfectly. It's done to not reveal too much of the boss just yet, just besides the fact he is huge given the fact you're up pretty high when this happens. That and his creepy ass glowing red eyes that stalk the player when he peeks through the window. This alone would be enough to make this level one of the creepiest in the game, but you actually get to go against Massiface as he's the Chapter 7 boss yokai. The reveal of the boss fight, Massiface, is just as menacing as the first time you see him as he slowly climbs up to the top floor where the players are. The full reveal of Massiface reveals he is a humanoid yokai with bleached skin and strange robotic red eyes. Not to mention he has a giant X-shaped scar on the middle of his forehead. This guy is just super uncanny looking, as he looks enough like a human for you to recognize him as such, but the odd features on his face really make him hard to look at times. He's a car crash of a yokai. The wiki also states that Massiman has the ability to inspirit other yokai just simply by staring at them or weirdly flicking them in the head, which by the sheer size of this guy, right, he's basically gonna decapitate you in one of the most gentle ways ever. His creepiness is even backed up by the in-game description of him, which reads the following: if a giant man-shaped shadow falls over you on a hazy night, do not turn around, just wait for him to leave. Those who turn around disappear and fade from memory. Jesus Christ. This guy is like the worst Titan from Attack on Titan, except he's a yokai terrorizing children. So yeah, this guy is pretty much the worst thing you could run into if you woke up in the yokai universe randomly. All I can say is, do not turn around. The Infinite Inferno was one of the more requested things I should talk about, as talking about Hazy Lane and the Infinite Tunnel and not talking about Infinite Inferno is considered a war crime in some places. The Infinite Inferno appears first in the series as post-game content for Yokai Watch 1. After the game ends, Whisper will tell the player that the seal around the Infinite Inferno is gradually weakening, and if it were to fully fade away, the powerful yokai trapped inside could escape and wreak havoc. Upon entering the Infinite Inferno, the game does very little to fill in the player with what the place even is, besides a few NPCs warning you about the Inferno ahead. The creepiest part of this segment is it basically acts as a hell type of world to the yokai universe, as when you start to explore the Inferno, you'll realize that a lot of the boss enemies are the previous bosses you've already defeated, meaning you basically sent their spirits to hell. Even though they look very similar to their previous versions, these are much more roided out versions of the bosses, making them even tougher than before. It is never confirmed to be hell, but the way the Inferno plays out with you traversing the different levels of hell, all while fighting off damned souls of yokai you defeated, it's pretty creepy. Not to mention some of the yokai's descriptions down here suggest they have the ability to fish tortured souls from the flames below. So yeah, if this isn't hell, then I'm not afraid of mirrors, you know what I'm saying? While I think conceptually both Hazy Lane and the Infinite Tunnel are both more unique, the Infinite Inferno is a classic case of why the fuck are you depicting hell in a kid's game? I mean, it goes hard as fuck, don't get me wrong, but some of the subject matter here is a little intense, no? Regardless of it being too creepy for a kid's game, this has got to be some of the best post-game content I've seen for a game like this, and a pretty cool spin on a typical boss rush mode. Yokai Watch has a lot more material to pull from, like the McCracken boss, the old lady witches, and even the eerie coin laundromat, but for now that's where we'll put a pin in the creepy stuff for Yokai Watch. And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for watching all the way through, and don't forget to leave your comment for a chance to be featured in a future episode. We're closing in real close on 30K subscribers. I'd like to say a personal thank you. That's huge, man. Thanks a lot for all the people who subscribed and were nice on the last episode. Anyway, thanks for all the new people, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace.